Hi everyone, today we are going to do some more budget beef prep for Carnivore and BBBE. I'm Anita from KetogenicWoman.com, where I share keto and carnivore recipes, other cooking ideas. These things help me to lose over 125 pounds. I hope you check out my website and some of my other videos and join me on this journey as I try to lose the rest. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back. I hope you liked today's video. Okay, so let's go over what I'm going to cook today. It's all beef. All of these are what I would consider budget cuts. They used to be super budget cuts. Prices of beef have gone up. There's no question about it. And the prices that I have here in Western Canada might be totally different from what you have wherever you are in North America or another country, of course. So the point is, I'm going to the store and I'm buying the lowest price cuts they have there and trying to make it work. Because I need to be on a budget too, and sometimes I don't pay attention, but now I'm paying attention now that the prices are going up. So let's go over what I have here. This is a piece of brisket. Right now, this week, for those in my area, this only works for you, Safeway has it on sale for $4.99 a pound, Canadian. This piece is about it's 2.6 pounds. This is a blade bottom roast. Now, it is very similar to a chuck roast. Here in Canada, or here in my little corner of Canada, it's really rare to find a chuck roast in the supermarket. They're all blade roasts. They're very, very similar. Some people have told me they're the same. I don't know. So if you know something about that, I would love to get a comment from you explaining to me if they are the same. In Canada or Western Canada here, sometimes I have seen them in the store sold as pot roast. So basically it's a roast that is tied up like this. It's got good fat in it, and if you cook it right, it's very, very juicy and tender. That roast was $8.97 a pound. Now I know that was at the local supermarket. I know that Costco has them for less, but I couldn't get to Costco yesterday. And so the same thing happened with these ribs. The ribs at Costco cost less than what I paid yesterday for them. These ribs cost $7.49 a pound. They are big back ribs. They're not those they're not those big chunky short ribs. They are the back ribs. You can kind of, they're thinner. But I made them last week in the crock pot and they were super good. They were the first things to go last week because I was eating the meat that I prepared. I am going to link down last week's low cost beef meal prep video. So at Costco, you can get them for under $7 a pound. It was $6 something. I'm going to cook them different today. I'm going to cook them in the oven so you can see another way to make these same ribs that I had last week. This brisket is also going to be cooked in the oven. I was hoping to cook all three of these at the same time in the oven, but I don't think it's going to fit. So this chuck roast is going to go in the slow cooker. But it's easy I will link down below how I normally do cook it when I cook it in the oven. So that, not everybody has a sous vide, not everybody has a slow cooker or an air fryer. I tend to, use lots of different appliances because one, I have them, two, I think it's fun. 3, sometimes I can't turn on the oven, but today we have a day where it's a good 10 degrees cooler than it has been for the last couple weeks. So I'm turning on the oven because I like the way brisket turns out in the oven. I hope that these ribs turn out okay. I think they will. So here's my plan. I'm going to salt and pepper all of these at the same time. I'm going to sear the chuck roast or blade roast and the brisket in this cast iron skillet. It's an oven-proof skillet. And I'm not going to sear the ribs. So I'm going to take what I need over to the stove. Well, actually, first let's just talk about how I'm going to salt and pepper them. I'm using my favorite mix. You don't have to do this. Use whatever you like to use. I know that some people who do carnivore only use salt and some use no salt. That is fine. I like to use a mix of kosher salt and white pepper. I am sensitive to black pepper, but white pepper sits very well with me. So I use a 3-to-1 ratio. For every tablespoon of kosher salt, I use 1 teaspoon of the white pepper. And then I mix it all together. I got my new little mini whisk, which I love. It's great for mixing things like this. So they're all gonna get the same treatment. And this is just my go-to rub. So I'm just going to, and I sprinkle them very generously because in the long, slow cooking, you know, sometimes you lose some of the flavor and it gets absorbed in. So I always kind of go a little heavy on this. Just want to make sure I cover it all sides, them all over. I also get a fair bit around it and on the floor. It's just the way it is with cooking sometimes. Okay, so I have a little bit left over in case I need it later for anything. Okay, so I'm going to, for now, I'm going to lay the ribs here in this pan because this is the pan I'm going to use. So I do have foil in here, but I have a piece of parchment laying on top, and I'll show you how I plan to wrap that before I sear those. So I'm going to lay a sheet on top, and you know that you don't have to do this. The whole purpose of the parchment paper for me is I've had so many people tell me don't let the foil touch your food, so I got all worried about that. So I'm just protecting my food from the foil. But the ultimate goal here is to wrap these ribs nice and tight. So hopefully you can see what I'm making a parcel that will hopefully be airtight when I'm done. I am going to put another piece of foil around that. We basically want these ribs to be airtight. They'll create their own moisture and steam and everything else and cook in their own juices, and they will be fall apart tender. That's what we want. Okay, so we have a nice snug little package here. I think that should do it. The foil is not touching my meat. Okay, so that one is ready to go once the oven is ready, and I'm going to take this meat over to the stove to sear both these pieces. So I'll see you over there. Okay, so I've got my bacon grease heated up, about 2 tablespoons. It is melted. I think it's ready to go. I'm going to start with the roast. Just gonna put it in here. Oh, there we go. You can hear that sizzle. Gonna let it sear, you know, a minute or 2 on each side. So, including the sides if possible. You don't 100% have to sear your roast before you put it in the crock pot, but it does make for a better end result, I think. You get that nice crispy crust on there, and it just intensifies, I think, the flavor and the appearance and everything else. So that's why I like to do it. And I'm going to be making this pan dirty anyways, because this is what I'm going to cook the brisket in. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. So I am going to move the roast from here into my crock pot liner, and then the brisket, I'm going to sear it in this same pan as well. So I'm going to move that now. Just going to go and rest this in my crock pot while we deal with the brisket. So I'm going to let that crisp up for a couple minutes, and then I'll flip it over and do the other side. And we will actually be cooking it in this pot. I'll be putting the lid on it, but right now I'm just searing it. So this is looking pretty good. Got a nice crust. I'm going to turn that off. I have the oven set to 250. So I'm going to grab my lid. This is going to go in the oven at 250, and the ribs are going to go in the same oven also at 250. And I'm going to let that go for about 3 hours because brisket should cook for about an hour a pound. In 2 hours, I will check the ribs because they will likely be finished a lot sooner. So moving this into the oven right now. Okay, so those two things, the blade roast or chuck roast and the ribs are in the oven, and I have set it at 250. Timer is on for 2 hours to remind me to check the ribs. The brisket will likely cook for 3 hours. So now let's get these going, or this going. Oh, no, sorry. The brisket is in the oven and the ribs are in the oven. The blade roast is here. So I've got it in there. It's been seared, but I need a few more things to go in here. I'm going to put in some liquid. You can just use water, but I have this broth that I need to use up in my fridge. So I decided, well, I should just use that. So that's what I'm gonna probably, yeah, I think 2 cups. Yeah, that looks about right to me. So 2, but again, just use water if that, if you don't have any broth on hand. Sometimes I'll save my juices from cooking meat and I'll use that. I am going to put on some garlic. You don't have to. I like to. I usually would have used fresh garlic, but the strangest thing happened at the store the other day. They ran out. Never heard of that. I'm just spreading some on the top. Okay, so that's that. It's already got its nice salt and pepper crust. It's got some liquid. I'm putting the lid on. Today I'm going to cook it at high. Because I want it to be done in 4 or 5 hours, and it's only 2 pounds, so I'm pretty sure it'll be done. I mean, I'll be checking it. You want this roast, if you're going to cook it in the slow cooker or your crock pot, you want it to be fork tender. Like when I stick a fork in it later, if it's not falling apart, it has to stay in longer. I mean, that's the best way to have it. So there you go. By the time this is all done, there's going to be 7 pounds of meat ready, and hopefully just a few hours. And this is my beef meals for the week. Well, it won't last a whole week, but it'll last a few days. And I also add eggs and bacon and other things. So, it should last me a few days. So we will see you in the next segment, which will be when I pull out those ribs. All right, these should be ready. So I did make a slight change when I checked these. They, like at the 2 hour mark, they should have been almost ready, and they seemed like they still had a long ways to go. And then I realized I forgot to move the rack down to the bottom, which shouldn't make a huge difference, but anyways, they were sitting in the middle of the oven, so I gave it another hour and I turned it up to 300, which should be fine for both this and the brisket, and they're still on the middle rack. But this should now be ready. It's been 3 hours. Two were at 250. The last hour has been at 300. And so I am going to check it. And hopefully I don't have to put it back in, but I think it should be okay. Oh yeah, look at those. This is what you're looking for. Those, see how they're just like coming. Let me just open it up a bit more. Let's get one of them over here. So you can see the bone is getting dry, and these are just peeling. You know, you can just peel it away from the bone with your fork. I mean, that's what you want. So what happens when you cook it in the steam like this, in all its moisture, all the collagen and everything, all the good stuff in here, look at that, it just comes right away. And by the way, you can save these bones for bone broth if you like. So these are done. I'm gonna pull them all out. Okay, so this is exactly what I was hoping for. I'm going to move this out of the way, and I don't think the brisket is ready yet, but I'm going to bring it over here and just check it, because you just never know. It's getting there, yeah. Because it's fairly thick, I think I'm gonna let it go in there for another 30 minutes. And then I think it'll be perfect. So, well, let me just check, since we have the camera on, we'll just check this. This has been 3 hours. It probably isn't ready, but let's check the progress. Okay. Yeah, it's still too firm. I'm pressing the fork in, and it should literally be falling apart. So, but that's only been 3 hours, so I'm thinking that's gonna be at least another 2. Okay, so this is gonna go back in, and we'll see you when the brisket's ready. Okay, so this was in the oven for 4 hours. The first 2 hours were 250, the second 2 hours were 300, and it has been sitting here resting for half an hour. So I think it is ready to cut. Put it onto this board. It is very nicely well done, which is how it should be with the brisket. This brisket needs a long, slow cook because it's a very tough piece of meat, and all that, all the sinews and like there's collagen and muscle fibers and everything else that all just melts into the meat. And I need my sharp knife. So I can see the fibers of the meat. The grain is running this way. So I'm going to cut like this. So what I'm going to do with this is I will make, like, this is the juice, because I didn't add anything. So this is the juice and the fat from the meat. And that, like, I'll keep that for the gravy for this. But I just wanted to show you a piece here. So it should be nice and soft like this. You should just be able to pull it apart with forks. You shouldn't need to necessarily cut it with a knife. So it's nice and tender. I'm glad I let it go in for that extra hour. And so now we'll just give it a little taste. Mm. Teddy's waiting. Pippi seems oblivious. Oh, now she's coming. Okay, let's go. This is brisket. Yes, it is. Who can? Oh, you can both sit very nicely. Yes, that's such good doggies. Such great doggies. There, wasn't that yummy? Wasn't that yummy? So yeah, this is a really good. There's so many things you can do with the leftovers. Like you can just eat it like this. You can simmer that up, reduce it down, make a gravy. Some people add like xanthan gum to it or whatever to make a thicker gravy. I don't, but you certainly could. You could make a thicker gravy. One of my favorite things to do, and especially if you look back here, there's some real fatty parts to this. That if you cut this up into pieces and fry it in like a cast iron pan or something, it is so good with eggs in the morning, like fried fatty brisket pieces with eggs. It's just delicious. So you can do that kind of thing. Sandwiches, because it just falls apart in your mouth. So Like, there is nothing tough about this meat at all when you're done with it. Just have to cook it, you know, not be afraid to cook it low and slow. And if it doesn't look like it's falling apart with your fork, then leave it in a little bit longer. Okay, so I think I'm just gonna check the other roast that we have here. Okay, it's getting better, but it is not yet done. So this is now 4.5 hours. So I am going to let it go for another hour, and I'll provide a few seconds of footage of that coming out and being sliced up so that you can see what that looks like when it's done. And then the rest of this is going to get wrapped up. So we've done the brisket. That was the cheapest of the meats at $4.99 a pound. We did the pot roast here, and that was $8.97 a pound, I believe, but it is cheaper at Costco. I just couldn't get to Costco yesterday. And in the fridge already, I have put away the ribs, and they were $7.49 a pound. And I will show some footage of this later, but this will be a few days worth of meat, and of course I'm adding eggs and bacon to my meals. So it lasts about 5 or 6 days. It was barely 6 days for the last, for the meat that I made last week, which I'll link down below. So there you go, some easy, low-cost cuts of meat, slow cooker and oven. I hope you find that useful and can incorporate some of this into your carnivore, BBBE, ketovore way of eating. And we will see you on the next video.
I had it here on the counter because I was using it. There it is. I don't usually keep it in there. I found it. What do they call it anyways? Meal prep. Question mark. Mark. I got a face full of steam. I can't see. My glasses are... I should have done that.